property owner threatens us with retaliation for stepping on his lawn. So I get the city to tear down his house. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. We live next to a large open grass field. There's an old house on the property, but it's condemned and no one lives there. The owner of the property only shows up to mow the field, but does nothing else with the property. The garage beside the house is caving in on itself and just looks like trash. People walk through the field to go fish on the river, walk their dogs, or just wander. People think it's just city public property. A few days ago, we were outside playing with our dog and toddler. We were walking a few feet off our driveway, which is technically his property. He just happened to be driving by and pulled over and began yelling and was just in general overly aggressive. He yelled that we needed to stay on our own property. He accused us of tossing cigarette butts, but we don't smoke, and beer cans, even though we're never drinking outside, all over the field. He also yelled that we drive all over his field, causing mud puddles. Again, completely not true. He then pointed to our dog and complained that she needs to stay off his grass. In the past, he'd specifically said that he didn't care if our dog walked in the field. He proceeded to say that if he found any dog crack anywhere, he was going to retaliate against us, and we're not going to like it. This all happened within a few minutes. My boyfriend took the toddler and dog inside and came back out to try to talk to him and sort out these crazy accusations, but the guy had already left. We called the police to document the incident since he did make a threat. We're now looking into getting cameras and a way to get a fence up. Since the other neighbors also play with their dogs in the field and strangers walk through all the time, he can't blame us for any evidence of dogs being present, but that won't stop him from blaming us anyways. And I don't know what he means by retaliate. I've never been bothered by the crappy house on the property. Not my business or problem. But since he wants to be a jerk, suddenly I'm super bothered about it. So I called the city code enforcement office and filed a complaint. I said I've been seeing wild animals coming and going from the building, and that I see kids walk through the field all the time, and I worry someone's gonna get hurt, and that my neighbors are all upset about this too. Now, all of this is true, but I just frankly never gave a crap until now. He now has 30 days to either demolish the whole thing or fix it up, and it's definitely beyond fixing. Or else he has to appear in front of a judge. The city will fine him severely, and if action still isn't taken, they'll seize the property from him entirely. You want to scream at my family in front of my toddler and threaten my dog? I think you're gonna be a little too busy now with the city breathing down your neck. Enjoy your fines, court costs, and construction bills, jerk. For some clarification, the building on the property is not his home. It's an old house that has been uncared for and allowed to fall apart for the past decade. Multiple people in the neighborhood have called and complained, but the old code enforcement officer just gave him warning after warning. The property owner has been asked by neighbors to please take care of the problem, because it's awful to look at and wild animals hide in there. He's refused. There's a new code enforcement officer that actually cares and wants it taken care of. Property owner has had years to take care of the issue. Me calling only helped speed things up, but it was gonna happen anyway. We are not angry because he doesn't want us on the property. It's his property and he has that right. We're angry because he gave us permission to play fetch on the field, and when he changed his mind, which again is his right, instead of telling us he changed his mind, he instead shows up out of nowhere, very hostile and making threats. Update: COVID caused all the court appearances to be pushed back by a few months. So he hadn't done a thing to the building. Just within the past 2 weeks, he finally had a crew come take it down. It took about a week. I assume he waited till the last possible moment before his updated court date to do this. When the garage door was opened, you could see it was much worse than expected. The back portion of the roof was completely caved in all the way to the ground. It's a miracle nobody got hurt while they were taking things out of there. But now the building is gone and it's one less eyesore and danger to the neighborhood. The house itself is still pretty bad, but not as bad as the garage. Also, found out where he lives, and it's in this mansion of a house in a very wealthy neighborhood. So clearly he does well enough for himself that he could have afforded to take care of these issues long ago. He just doesn't care. We haven't had any further altercations with him. He's had no reason to even know we called because most of the neighborhood has been complaining for years. But we are careful to avoid him, and our dog now wears an electric collar, so no one can question her being outside our property. I've still seen other people walking around the field, but now that it's winter, that'll stop for a while. Here's hoping he finally sells the property to someone who can actually take care of it. To play devil's advocate here, if he had this much problem with other people going into his property and messing around, maybe it all just got aimed in the wrong direction. I'm sure with people walking their dogs through there all the time, there's crap all over the place. And we all know how teenage kids are, so there may be damage to the property or something like that, and that would probably account for the beer cans. Maybe the guy was just having a bad day and pointed this all at his neighbors because he happened to see you guys step 3 feet onto his property. Regardless though, the threats are going way overboard. If anything, these neighbors are your best friends. They have perfect sight of your property and can maybe help you get people to stay off it. Maybe not the people you want to go making enemies with. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some Bybee music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Karen tries to cut in front of me in line and immediately regrets it. This happened to me just before the pandemic at a Wally World. It was a very busy day. My husband and I had just finished our shopping, so I was standing in line waiting to cash out. Now, the lines were very, very long. There's at least 8 people behind me, and I was probably at least the 4th person before the cashier in line. My husband stepped away to find some beverages for us to drink on the way home since it was still warm outside. This lady, the Karen of our story, was standing near the coolers that are near the register. She was acting like she was looking in the coolers for something. She put her hand on my cart as if to steady herself. So I moved my cart back a smidge so she could look in the cooler without having to touch my cart. I tried to just ignore her. I'm not the type of person who likes to converse with people I don't know. I have severe social anxiety. She continues to look in the coolers, but lets go of my cart. The line continues to move slowly, but I'm now at least 3rd in line. So you can understand, the Karen never said a word to me and continues to look in the cooler as if she's looking for something. Now, for some ungodly reason, Karen firmly grabs the front end of my cart, holds onto it, yells to someone, and motions for them to come over. I looked over to see what looks to be like a neckbeard. He was probably at least 6 feet tall, every bit of 300 pounds, and actually had a neckbeard. I really wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Karen continues to call for Neckbeard to come over as she motions for him to get in front of me. Now, this Karen never once said a word to me, nor did she even ask if she could get in front of me. I turned around and looked to see that there's at least 12 people standing in line behind me. Karen's Neckbeard had a cart that was overflowing and was expecting to get in front of me without asking. I did the only thing I could do. I pushed my cart forward and said, "Nope, nope, nope." Karen takes her hand off my cart, steps back like I just ran over her foot, and stands there with a surprised Pikachu face, with her lips flapping open and closed. She then looks around to see if anyone would help, looking panicked as if she was just assaulted, but no one would help her. I happened to hear the lady behind me say, "Damn right," as she closed the gap between us. I also saw the man behind her, as he moved forward to close the gap. He was just shaking his head. I heard a few chuckles from the crowd that was watching all this. No one was going to stand up for Karen. An injustice had been done to her, but no one was going to help her. Neckbeard then says to her, "Good mom, the Lord is lone, where do I go?" Karen just signals to move further down and walks away with Neckbeard. I never laughed so hard in my life. I couldn't believe that I acted so quickly to stop the jerk. You run into one of these every once in a while. People who think they can just cut in line for no apparent reason. Like, for whatever reason, their time is more important than everyone else's. I'm sorry. Especially when you have a massive cart full like that, I'm not letting you cut in line. And to try and just force your way in is a real jerk move. No one's backing you up in this instance. They all saw what you did, and none of them were happy about it. My manager tried to fire me for bogus reasons until I pointed out exactly how he was breaking the law. This happened to me about 20 years ago while in college. I'm being deliberately vague because reasons. I got a job basically office sitting on weekends. I showed up at 8 a.m. and every hour I checked over things, handled the occasional phone call, and then left when the 4 p.m. person arrived. Most of the time I read, watched TV, or played games on my laptop. I probably worked no more than 10 minutes of every hour, unless something was wrong. It went on like this for years. The pay was decent, holidays were double pay, and I even had opportunities to cover weekday shifts when others were sick. One day while I was covering the midday shift, my boss asked me to come into his office. He told me that the evening weekday position was going to become available that night. He offered me the position, which I accepted. I was told to punch out and return at 5 p.m. that night. The reason it went down like this should be obvious. Things went okay for a while. I showed up at 4 p.m., did the normal things, then left at 12 a.m. when my relief arrived. It was a little more work with more call volumes and things like that, but after 9 months, things started to go south. The daytime person developed a huge attitude problem and went from a nice person to a total carrot. She would complain about everything I did. For example, one time a system jammed up at a remote site and she called them. 5 hours later, I saw the jam was still there, so I called that site again to see if they were still working on it or if something else was wrong, because the woman on our end who would be the one to help them was leaving soon. They did have a problem, and so I hooked them up. My reward for making sure the problem got solved and not having to bother an upper-level employee at home on a Friday just after having left work, I got yelled at because Karen complained that I had apparently ignored her log entry about the issue. My defense was ignored. The boss had me highlight important things on the log to verify that I had read them. Things plodded on for a while with this new normal. I would tiptoe around Karen when needed, thankful for the fact that I only had to deal with her for no more than 5 minutes. I did the stupid highlighting thing and my log entries started getting more and more detailed, even referencing Karen's calls when I had to follow up on an issue that crossed shifts. The following morning, just after I crossed the year mark, I went on vacation to visit some friends out of state. When I got back, after about a week, my boss came down after everyone had left and had me describe how I did a certain task which involved certain updates. I had to explain to him how I did it and so forth. He then told me that I had not been doing it at all and that he was firing me. I had transposed the date code of the English file for the French file, which was the previous one. The newest one had already been applied anyways, so nothing was wrong. It was just a reason to get rid of me. So I left the office. My state is an at-will employment state, which means I can quit at any time for any reason, and my employer can terminate me at any time for any reason. The only exceptions were state and federal laws, such as race, religion, etc. I thought I was screwed, so I just started applying everywhere I could. During my job search, I happened to accidentally stumble upon a link about employment law. Out of curiosity, I read it, and discovered that my employer had shot themselves in the foot. In the employee handbook, there was a job security clause. What this stated was that they would never lay us off and such if our jobs were eliminated. We would simply be retrained and sent to fill an opening elsewhere in the company. It sounds good, but it resulted in them cooking up reasons to fire people to get around it. But their fancy, high-priced lawyers had missed something. In my state's laws, the ones passed by the legislature, I was screwed because of at-will. What they neglected was case law, the ones determined by courts. This site cited a case from the state Supreme Court that had ruled that a job security clause waived at-will on the employer side, turning it into a just cause relationship. This means that they had to have a real reason to fire me. With that in hand, I sought out a lawyer. After my consultation with her, I set about collecting my evidence. My former boss did not realize that I knew more about this program than he did, seeing as I ran the same software on my own computer and laptop. I experimented. The date of the file which they tried to use against me is baked into the version 2. I was able to demonstrate to my lawyer that if I applied the same update over and over, which my former employer stated would change the date every day, would, in reality, display the date of the file. I showed this by backdating my own copy by a year using the update archive available from the vendor. Next, I showed her how the task used to be automated. A script would snag the file and process it every day on its own. A change on the vendor's site broke the script. It was an easy fix, but no one bothered to do it because the guy who had wrote it retired. The fix often involved deleting 3 characters on one line in the script. The task was also marked as only being a weekday task. In my firing, I was told how important this update was and so forth. If it was so important, why was it not being done on weekends and holidays? The vendor pushed out updates on those days too, as I showed my lawyer the one from Christmas morning. And why had the automation not been fixed? With all that in hand, she contacted them. After presenting them with the law they broke and all the evidence I'd collected, they were forced to settle with me. So in the end, their fancy high-priced lawyers did not do their homework. I did. Thank you to the wonderful librarians I've known in my life who taught me my information literacy skills. They paid dividends in this case. I don't know what it is with employers that like to try and pull sneaky stuff like this. It really sounds like they were just fishing for a reason to get rid of you. I mean, it doesn't sound like you were the best employee doing the bare minimum, but if they wanted to change that, this isn't the way to go about it. Trying to let someone go on something bogus is only gonna have negative repercussions for you. You're giving them a big weapon against you. It's not worth it. If that comes back to bite you in the butt, it can ruin everything. If there's really an employee you have a problem with, go through the steps you're supposed to go through. Do it the right way. Don't be a jerk like this. My entitled sister wants me to house my niece for free during university. My niece had to move back in with her mother after the lockdown started. She lost her job and all her classes were online. Her lease was month to month, so she didn't have to worry about breaking her lease. Recently, the schools have reopened and she started attending classes again. Problem is, her apartment, which was walking distance from her university, is now rented. Parking in the area sucks, and it's an hour one way from her mother's house on public transit. I will say that my niece is also incredibly spoiled and is taking classes for a degree with no practical benefits. By this, I mean that it will in no way help her with a career path, nor are they necessary courses for further education. I got a call from my sister asking if my niece could live with me because I live alone in a 2-bedroom house, and I'm a 15-minute bus trip away from her university. I said no for several reasons. One, I work nights and need to sleep during the day. My niece is a very loud young woman and doesn't understand the concept of an indoor voice. Last time she stayed in the same home as me, I was sleep deprived because of her practically yelling on her phone, and it affected how I did my job, resulting in a write-up. Number 2, my niece is also a very messy person. I helped with the move out, and the memory makes me shudder. Some of the unwashed dishes in the sink were tossed because they were beyond cleaning. She tried to just sit on random crap and text her friends and scroll TikTok. I had to take her phone and lock it in the glove box of the U-Haul we rented to get her butt moving the house. My sister still calls me a jerk for doing this. Number 3, while I may have a 2-bedroom home, the second room is my office/work room. I've been in the process of making wire wrap necklaces to sell online for extra income, and I need the area as a workspace. It's also my library, for lack of a better word. I keep my collection of novels on bookshelves in there and a comfy old recliner for reading it. Number 4, my niece is allergic to cats and I have 3. My sister seems to think I can keep them all either in my bedroom or locked up in the basement for the school year. Absolutely not. Number 5, and this is the big one, my sister's under the belief that my niece wouldn't have to help out with household expenses or be expected to cook for herself. She also thinks that my niece shouldn't have to get a job while in school to focus on her studies. She tried to pull the "we're family and should help each other out" card, but that didn't count for crap when my step-siblings nearly made me homeless after my stepdad died and gave me 30 days to find a new place for me and my dog. Dog-friendly buildings where I live are hard to find. The only way I would agree for my niece to live with me is that she would give me $250 a month to help cover utilities and part of the internet. I figured that that's a steal considering a cheap place around her school is more than double or even triple that, plus utilities, and she could use the garage for her car for free. But I would also expect her to buy her own food and clean up after herself, like doing her own laundry, keeping her room clean, and putting her dishes at least in the sink, if not the dishwasher. I wouldn't expect her to cut the grass or shovel snow. The thought of even asking her to do this already gives me a headache. Now I'm getting texts from both my sisters telling me that I'm a horrible person and should open my home to this, that it's unreasonable to expect a 19-year-old to spend 2 hours in the bus every day and yada yada yada. Part of me feels guilty because I could move my office and workspace down into the basement, but I can't afford the expense of a second person in my home without them chipping in for the bills, nor will I lock away my cats in their home. I mean, it's your house and it's your rules. I don't think you're really asking too much. $250 a month is a steal, honestly. Even if she doesn't have a job, I'm sure mom can afford to pay $250 a month for her to stay there. All the other stuff is really very basic. Just take care of the area around you that you use. It really doesn't sound like you're asking for anything more than that. If you're doing her the favor of letting her stay in your home, the least she can do is respect it. My fiance got fired for manifesting failure. So my fiance worked at a bridal shop. She had an appointment set up at the end of the day, and the person ended up not showing up. She jokingly said, "I said I doubt she shows up, so I must have manifested this." Her coworker ran off to tell the boss. Boss pulled her aside and said, "You can go home." Called her later and fired her with the reasoning being, "You're manifesting my business's failure, and I can't have that. I need to let you go." I'm absolutely dumbfounded at this reasoning. She was a crap boss. Best for my fiance in the end. Okay, I'm sorry, what? We were talking earlier about employers coming up with crap reasons to fire you, but this has gotta take the cake. How do you deal with a person like this? What's next? Is she gonna start firing people over their sign? Is she doing tarot card readings at home for who's bringing in the best business? Who's giving off the right vibes? This is honestly one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I agree with our original poster that your fiance's probably better off. Still, she should follow up with someone about this. If there was ever a case for wrongful dismissal, I would think this would be it. I feel like any half-baked lawyer could pull a win out of this one. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything's linked in the description.